Welcome to Sober.Coffee, a weekly coffee chat sharing experience, strength, and hope for anyone on the sober road to recovery. You can download Sober.Coffee weekly on all podcast platforms and check us out on Instagram at Sober.Coffee Podcast and on Twitter at Sober.Coffee Pod. To learn more about us and to help support these sessions, visit online at Sober.Coffee. Here are your hosts, two guys on their own path to recovery, Mike and Glenn. Let's join them at the coffee shop.
Glenn.
Morning, brother.
Help.
Let's jump in, man.
Help.
Hey, great seeing you again.
Yeah, good to be here.
Help with what?
Help. I need
more help?
Yeah, I need some inspiration this morning.
Help is the best word.
We're trying to work through, want to hit all the steps and have some guests in here, but I tell you, I need your help today. You shared something not too long ago, and it was an analogy of life that really interested me, and I found that I kept referring back to it in my own head, and so I need you to reframe it for me. I need you to reposition and represent it, I guess. Tell me about the difference between being a right-hander and a left-hander. I just love this analogy. It really played well for me.
You mean other than what set of golf clubs to buy?
Well, exactly.
Yeah. So, this, so for me, just to recap, this is, we walk the sober path of recovery, right? It's not a destination. It's a journey. It's something we do every day. I do a bunch of things, 22 things to stay sober. And, and for me, it wasn't a light switch, right? It wasn't, and I learned that early back in my first rehab years ago. I was dying to get through the steps and get back to work and get back to my normal life and maybe learn how to drink normally again, right? That's, and boy, how foolish that was.
No,
right?
that was certainly at the back of my mind as well. I thought, okay, maybe I overshot this whole sobriety thing. Maybe this program is going to help me be able to be a wine sipper. And
yeah, I want some tips.
Right.
All I want is a glass of wine, right?
Yeah.
So, one of the things, and this kind of evolved, this whole right-hand, left-hand thing evolved over time. But my first rehab, there was a dude there, and we'll have to drop his stuff in as a bonus. The guy's named Dr. Kevin McCauley. He was a surgeon or a physician for the Air Force or Navy, right? And he went through his own, I don't want to tell his story, but he went through his own problems, and he went through a rehab program called Leavenworth. And, he ran into some problems with his own addictions, and he came out, he purposed his life, for helping people get, sober and also learn about the brain chemistry and about addiction, the addiction model and things like that. Right. So really smart guy. He gave a lecture every Saturday while I was in rehab. So I heard the same lecture 4 times and I was glued. And, some of it talks about rats and some of it talks about, the inner brain and the frontal cortex and all that stuff, neurotransmitters. And so what I'd learned was, when I think about drinking, over time, booze really worked for me a lot of times, right? So, what I learned was that was ingrained in my inner brain, right? They also call it the croc brain. They call it the fight or flight, fuck or feed, type of, it's where the inner decisions are made, right?
Okay.
So what I learned is as I was going through situations in life, situations that would overwhelm me, right? That inner brain, the frontal cortex makes some nice, sexy decisions, right? Process, what am I going to do first? What am I going to do second, right? What am I going to do today? That's all frontal cortex. But when it comes to fight or flight, right, that's the inner brain. And what I had programmed my inner brain was that booze worked. When I had stress, when I had a situation I wanted to escape from, booze was a solution. That was in my inner brain.
Sure.
So, that's over time, and this is only the whole right-hand and left-hand thing is only recent. But what I learned, again, remember, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, I am on the slow train. And this really came about working with folks and then talking to some of their spouses and trying to explain why they can't get it, right? Why they just, can't make a decision. I recently told my 14-year-old, about my drinking, and she looks across the table and she goes, well, if you know that it's harmful, why don't you just not drink?
Right.
Why do I have to go to these meetings? Why do I have to do stuff? And it's like,
it's
such a great, point. But I'm programmed, right? So what I related that to, because I'm trying to describe this process, right, and why I have to do 22 things, and sometimes I'm trying to convince myself why I have to do 22 things, and for me, it's a process, and what I can relate that to is I'm a right-hander. My whole life I've been a right-hander. 50 years, 50-some years I've been a right-hander. And I don't know if that's in the chromosomes. I don't know, but my brain knows that I'm a right-hander. And so now in sobriety, living sober, so being a right-hander, that's Glenn being a drinker, right? So now in sobriety, I have to learn how to be a left-hander. And so many things as I was trying all my relapses, all the times I went to detoxes and hospitals, I was trying, different ways, easier ways, the softer, easier path to do this, right? And I always got terrible results. So I started relating, hey, I have to learn how to live life as a left-hander, right? My natural instinct is right-hander. So as a left-hander, so hey, and I've shared this. It's no secret. For the first year of my sobriety, I took Antabuse. The way I look at it, that's the same thing as taking my right hand and hiding it behind my back, tying it behind my back.
Sure.
Right. So I can't even use it.
Right.
So there's no option to use it. So then I started to learn, in those situations, I'd be pulling at my arm, trying to pull my right hand out. I can't get it out, so I have to use my left hand. Right. So that's when I started to really realize,
the depth of the struggle.
Yeah.
Right.
And
because your natural instinct is to go to that right hand.
I'm a right-hander.
Right.
And so then I started to learn situations where I wanted to use my right hand, but then I had to say, well, I got to figure out how to use my left hand during these situations. And that's been the process, right? I really rely on progress, not perfection. That's my mantra. That's our mantra. That's everybody's, mantra. And it takes a lot of pressure off.
So there's two things. First of all, are you getting better at signing the check with the left hand? And in other words, that was a joke, but are you getting better at responding with your left hand now? Obviously, it was hard at first, but is it getting more natural? Is your penmanship better now with your left hand? And is really when does the struggle stop is I guess my ultimate question.
So the struggle certainly stops. I guess it's going to be different for everybody. For me, it took a long time. I took Antabuse for a year, and then I went off Antabuse. Then I had to, then my right hand was dangling, right? But I still had to use my left hand. It took a long period of time. I will say today, I can live life comfortably today, go through my day using my left hand. For a long period of time, it was very deliberate. Now it's more natural, right? However, if I was walking on the sidewalk and somebody threw something at me, I think this is where the inner brain, the croc brain comes out. I'm still a right-hander.
Your right hand's going to go up, right? Yeah,
and I can feel that in certain situations of my life today. As I live through life and somebody wings something at me, or I have it's a complicated term for it, but I call it my fuck it moments. When I get a fuck it moment, my right hand, my instant reaction is what my inner brain knows. Before I can use my frontal cortex and all those sexy 22 tools that I use.
Right.
Yeah, and let me process.
Process your emotions,
Let me
Glenn.
call my sponsor.
Yeah, right.
This is, and I love Dr. McCauley, how he describes it. He says, man, when you wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and every ounce inside of you, every fiber of your being says, I want to drink, and you start to sweat and you start to feel it, and your whole body tenses up, I mean, that's the working of the inner brain.
Sure.
You know, the hypocotomist. Dude, I'm not that level of a doctor, but you know, so you know, I have found that the 22 things I do a day, a week, you know, to stay sober, that helps me keep my right hand in my pocket.
Right, and helps train your left hand to course through life a new way.
You know, it's my left hand has been conditioned.
Right.
You know, it's just, you know, in fact, this is a hilarious story. I hope we have time for it. But, you know, I'm working with a sponsee, and I'm telling them, you know, it's a new sponsee, and, you know, we're talking about, you know, the promises, right? I always start with the promises. You know, it's like reading the last chapter of the book, right? And, you know, because I want to give folks an idea of what they're doing all this stuff for, right? So I let them read the last chapter of the book, and okay, let's fill in the book, right? So I told him, I said, hey, look, I want you to write out your analysis of the 9 steps, every word. Write out what every word means to you, what you feel about every word. There is no right or wrong answer. Let's just get a baseline, right? And then I tell them, write it with your left hand.
Literally. Okay.
So I have seen some absolute garbage writing because, you know, and I make them write it out on a piece of paper with their left hand. But I think it's a good visual, right? It's a good exercise to say, hey, here's what I'm going to be doing. And what we learn is when we work these steps and, you know, engage with each other and continue on the sober path, wherever you are on the sober path, we become better using our left hand.
Right.
And just like when I go to the gym, my right arm's stronger than my left.
Sure.
But if I'm going to the gym now and I'm working on my left arm,
on your left arm, it's
pretty soon my left arm is going to be stronger than that right arm.
Sure.
You know, so
you know, Glenn, for the next couple of minutes, you know, I need to ask you. So, your analogy was you're walking down the street, somebody whips a ball at you at 60 miles an hour, your right hand's going to go up, right? It's headed towards your head. Your right hand's going to go up. That's your natural instinct. I think what you're trying to say, if I'm getting you right, is life is going to throw you a fastball or a ball to the head, a death, a business deal gone bad, a car broken down, a death in the family, illness or a strained relationship. All these things are going to happen. I've known you for quite some time now, and I don't see the strain and the stress with you using the left hand. You know, I think that when we agreed to do these coffees, part of the reason that I was so excited to do this is because I think we're two guys that are quite comfortable in the joy that sobriety brings. And yeah, it takes, as you like to say, 22 things. It takes you working on your left hand versus your right hand. It takes things like doing steps, working with a sponsor, all these things. I just want to spend a couple of minutes just talking about the freedom, the relief, and the joy that is in your life now. And if I'm overstating it, tell me where the struggle is, because I know a lot of people who quit drinking and they're not happy. They're right, and maybe happy. You know, I got a good friend in the program who says, you know, happy. This is not a feel good program. This is a get well program, right? And so it's not about necessarily feeling good, but you understand what I'm saying. People are grumbling around saying, "Oh, yeah, I'd be better if I could drink over it," you know.
Well, hey, there was certainly a period of time. Great question, by the way. I think that's a double espresso. Question. Yeah, for a period of time, I was miserable. And I shouldn't use that word miserable. I was challenged. Because, and still this is the crazy part, there's some times today I still think about this. You know, when I'm using my left hand, this is early on, not so much today, but early on, I'm using my left hand, you know, metaphorically, I guess that's the right word, right? I'm using my left hand to do something, and my brain, the head trash, is telling me, what are you doing? You're so much better at that with your right hand. You know, and, you know, hey, I'm in business, and sometimes I get stuck on, you know, 5-hour calls, right? That maybe I'm not leading, I'm just participating, and, you know, hey, I get distracted, and there's times when I'm sitting there thinking, man, cocktail, man, Glenn, remember when you used to have your big solo cup, and you'd have one or two of those during these calls. Remember how smooth these calls went? Remember how focused you were? And you
starts looking sexy,
and you were
it?
patient. Yeah, that's a head trash, right?
Yeah, right.
So, that's kind of a struggle early on is as I'm using my left hand and seeing, hey, this doesn't feel natural. Mm-hmm. This isn't natural. Mm-hmm. I'm not happy with the result because my brain doesn't remember the time I puked during some of those calls, right?
Sure.
What my brain remembers is the positive, fun, boost that I got from using my right hand. So now I look at the results of my left hand and I'm not happy with it because I'm only comparing them to the creme de la creme time of when I use my right hand. Mm-hmm. But it's a good visual and there's a guy in our program and I borrow. There's rarely an original thought, but he uses the term we learn how to suffer better.
Right.
Right. So there's times when I'll write something out left-handed and it looks like garbage, and hey, what I know today, the facts that I have seen, is the more diligent I am using my left hand, the more I commit and the more I surrender and say, hey, I'm a left-hander.
Right.
The better things get, and I had to sit through a ton of badly written, notes with my left hand, until today, I can somewhat read them,
right. Right.
And I've also lowered my standard. I tell my wife that I'm a 92% guy.
Okay.
And she says, why is that? I said, because I'm not perfect. I said, I'll never hit perfect. I said, anything I do in life, I'm going to do it 92%.
But you're such an alcoholic mind. 92. What made you settle on 92 and not 88?
Well, because 88's a B.
Oh,
right. So I have kids, and we're all focused on grades.
B's a passing grade.
Yeah, it's certainly passing, and B is good, right? Yeah. But my whole life, I was the 120% guy,
right?
Which is bullshit because you can't give 120%.
No, you can't. Right.
So I just but that coaches me of saying, hey, I'm okay being okay. I'm okay delivering good. Mm-hmm. I don't have to be great. I don't have to be the best. I don't have to be, superstar outstanding.
Yeah, isn't that?
Yeah. I'm the 92% guy, and she laughs because everything I do around the house, she can point something wrong. I'm like, well, that's a 7%.
That's
it's freeing. So when you talk about freedom,
sure,
when you start to change your way of thinking and looking, and the more you use your left hand, the easier it becomes. The less you want to use your right hand. And the better results that you'll end up getting.
Right. I think about that during the hard times, but I loved how you brought out as well, you got to think about it in the good times. For me, my first year of sobriety delivered multiple deaths in my circle of influence, a close circle, and literal, life, death, and I had business changes and car, I had all these things happening. And I seem to not raise my right hand. I seem to raise my left hand during those times. But boy, as you pointed out, it was some of the quieter moments that I was raising my right hand because I thought, all of a sudden I made this out to be a bigger, better thing, this fancy glass, alcohol in a glass with rocks. I drank out of a brown paper bag, for Pete's sake. Where did I even have the memory of a fancy rock glass?
It's just amazing what the brain does. And here's one last final thought.
Yes.
And again, this is the faith in fact, right? This is the having the faith in people in the room, and I watch them get through any situation in life,
right,
without having to take a drink.
Up. Yep.
And then as I started to see my own facts, I started to get through little situations, right, and I'm like, hey, I didn't drink through that. I used to get bombed through those situations, and now I didn't drink. And then, I've been through some very great situations that I haven't drank.
That's right.
And I buried both my parents within a week.
Yeah,
I didn't drink through that.
Didn't drink through it.
And I go through the ups and downs. I go through the first wheel of life. Without having to take a drink, living life as a left hand, but I still am very well aware that I'm a right-hander.
It's out there. We got to pay attention to it.
Just don't use it.
All right. Well, can we come back next week and pay attention to it a little bit more?
I love it, man.
All right, man. Glenn, thanks so much.
All right, Mikey.
All right, talk to you.
Have a great week, brother.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for today's coffee chat. To contact the show, email us at podcast@Sober.Coffee. If you need immediate help, the AA hotline is 800-839-1686. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 800-273-8255. Remember, Mike and Glenn are sharing their own journey on the path to recovery. Any suggestions, medical or otherwise, are their own experiences and should not be viewed as professional advice. See you next week, and remember, there is a solution.